Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. This is the France 24 debate, the World This Week, on a Friday. We're with our roundtable of journalists, and with us this week, Anne-Elisabeth Moutet of The Telegraph and Sunday Telegraph, Vivian Walt of Time Magazine, Régis Le Sommier of Paris Match, and with us, Stéphane de Vries of Dutch station RTL4. It's time to talk about Europe, and let's start with the good news. The good news for Brussels, that is. Ireland, the only nation out of 25 to put that new austerity pact to a referendum, approving it by 60%. Aware that markets don't like surprises these days, voters finding the alternative just a little too scary for now. However, the Irish may be agreeing to take their medicines, but still the markets tanked, basically ignoring that result this Friday. Again, Frankfurt down 3.4%. Amid job worries across the ocean and inside the Eurozone, where unemployment hit a record 11% high, nearly 1 in 4 Spaniards out of a job. Spain, where earlier in the week the government had to bail out Bankia and start the search for 19 billion euros of red ink.
I think that the decision regarding Bankia, and all of the decisions we've made about financial affairs, are quite reassuring because they imply total transparency.
Mariano Rajo there, trying to put positive spin on 19 billion euros that he needs to find.
Yeah, well, what is 19 billion euros if we're used to 150 for Greece? It becomes very relative if you hear such numbers. But the question is this really useful money? Is this going to save the bank, Bankia in this case? Or is it just being money thrown in a big hole? That's a big question. And it's not really clear if this fourth bank of Spain will survive this crisis. So that's the question, basically.
It really feels like the tailspin is growing.
It doesn't look good, I must say. The Irish, it's, we're not looking for intelligence from the market. So the fact that they did not react to the Irish vote, which was not a narrow majority. Over 60% of people saying, yes, we're willing to, do what it takes to get back within guidelines. That's very impressive. And that also shows that Greece, in many ways, is quite exceptional within Europe. The problem in Spain, in some ways, this bank problem is sort of harks back to 2008. So they have at the same time a liquidity system and a systemic threat at the same time that they've got all the economic crisis that we are going through. Our banks no longer have this at the moment. So what you're really seeing is not just a tailspin, it's a kind of waves that sort of bring two different kind of crises together, and that's very dangerous.
And with the euro now trading under $1.23 this Friday, the president of the European Central Bank sending a stark and unequivocal message to Europe's politicians.
That configuration that we had with us by and large for 10 years, which was basically considered sustainable, I should add, in a perhaps myopic way, it's been shown now to be unsustainable unless further steps are being undertaken.
Vivian Walt, if that's not a wake-up call, I don't know what is.
It is, but in a sense also you have a lot of economic analysts now, and I've just been reading a couple of reports that came out today from various economic think tanks around Europe saying, the problem with statements like this from Mario Draghi and so on is that you have a lot of blame going around, and instead of which you should be really kind of boosting the Eurozone psychologically, and that fear and panic has sort of crept in and becoming a real economic factor.
Let me ask you about this, Stéphane de Vries, because you were in Brussels earlier this week to record a radio program, and it seems as though you're getting these sort of parallel messages. Some people saying, wake up, it's now or never. And then others, like we heard José Manuel Barroso, the president of the European Commission, saying what positive steps there have been this week, and again putting the positive spin. It must be confusing when you're there.
Yeah, it's very confusing. A lot of people are very depressed, and the others, they say, no, it's very good. Europe has always been constructed by crisis, so we're on a good way. So
are they in denial, or do they have a point?
I think they have a point, but that's because maybe I am in denial. I don't know. No, I'm very optimistic about the European Union and on the Eurozone as well. But we have to realize that we cannot continue like this because the whole way the European Union is constructed doesn't work anymore. But we don't have the real political will to change this, in spite of all the very nice sentences being said by Barroso, but also by all the other European leaders. But nobody really dares to go there where nobody dares to go, and that's a federation. And in my humble opinion, that's the only answer to this crisis.
I want to get back to a point that Elisabeth made about the Irish still believing in the euro. Latest opinion poll out of Greece shows that New Democracy, the right of center party, is now in the lead, a pro-euro party. There's still, despite all of this, a lot of people in Europe who believe in the common currency.
Well, because maybe they've gotten used to it and they don't see any other option that can keep going, with it. But to go back to the question, the central question of euro of the eurozone and of Europe at large is whether the European Central Bank is willing to step in and do his job. I mean, and act as a key player in that by, especially when you look at what's going on in Spain. The Financial Times was reporting that about, I don't remember exactly the sum, but an incredible number of people are pulling the money out of the bank in proportions that were never seen before. So somehow we're going to have to question. At one point, we've said this over and over and over, but do we really want Europe to function? And if we want Europe to function, we have to be a little bit like the U.S., and build the United States of Europe.
Which is what Mario Draghi seemed to be hinting at in those remarks.
Yes, but then again, this comes the German, and do the German wants, to have, and that's a major, blocking, country.
Now, before we turn the page on Europe's finances, a Facebook page worth checking out. The IMF boss justifying the comments she made in an interview with The Guardian, calling, you'll remember, on the Greeks to pay their taxes. More than 38,000 comments on her rebuttal, but only 2,000 odd likes.
Interesting.
Oh God, that hurts.
But maybe some comments no? Maybe are positive. Do you think? No.
No, I think she was right. At the end of the day, it's if you do not pay your taxes and you re-elect for 40 years the people who cook the books willfully, something which the Irish did not do, something which the Spaniards did not do. She was giving them a reality check. They don't like it, but too bad. The other thing is, I don't know whether we should worry so much about the euro slowing down, going down opposite the dollar. It might help us as long as we do not try and inject money for consumption. In which case, it will be a disaster because what we'll buy abroad will be even more expensive. But if we reinvest and try to export, it will actually help us.
Well, the European Union has a positive budget balance, commercial balance, so it's actually good news. And nobody seems to remember the fact that exactly 10 years ago, the dollar was 0.8 dollar cents. So that's 50%. 50%. Yeah, me too, because I was studying in the US at the time. But that's 50% below today's level. So nothing. There's no reason to worry.
Before we go, there's no reason to worry. I'm reassured if Stefan de Vries says it. Before we go, let's leave the turbulence of the euro area and move to the more pastoral setting of the preparations for toasting the continent's longest-serving head of state.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong.
Yes, the then Princess Elizabeth making the pledge on her 21st birthday. Her father's sudden death 6 years later would make Winston Churchill her first prime minister. From this coming Sunday on, it's the Queen's Silver Jubilee, 60 years on the throne. And there you see her wearing some of her trademark outfits there. Let me begin with you, Anne-Elisabeth Moutet. for those who don't follow this closely, I said silver jubilee. I meant diamond, of course.
Diamond jubilee, 60 years.
Diamond jubilee. Diamond jubilee. What is? I mean, there's only been Queen Victoria who's had a diamond jubilee.
If Queen Victoria was 63 years, so Elizabeth has got to hang on until 2015, and then she becomes the longest serving English queen ever, possibly the longest serving monarch in history. I would have to check that one.
How will you be celebrating?
I shall actually be celebrating here. I shall be commenting the flotilla, the pageant on the Thames, the 1,000 boats on the Thames, and I don't think there was such a large celebration on the Thames since the burial of Nelson in 1806. So that's really something important, I think.
Régis Le Sommier, your magazine Paris Match celebrating already with inside this week's edition. You've got a full-page spread that looks at the Queen's trademark outfits. You're calling it United Colors of Elizabeth II. This is Republican France, your readership. Why are they so interested in the Queen?
Because they don't have monarchs.
Yes, they do. We call them presidents.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
They don't dress as well.
But, this is only 1 year of the Queen dressing. I mean, this double spread covers only 1 year of like last year. And we don't have monarchs. I mean, we chopped the head of our a monarch a long time ago, and ever since we've been trying to find some ways to, so we're interested in what's going on because, of course, it brings, and especially with the refreshing new blood that was, coming with the Kate and William wedding last year. So it seems that the British monarchy is strong and thriving, and we're very interested in that. We're going to cover that very extensively this week.
Stéphane de Vries, how will you be celebrating the Queen's Jubilee?
I think, whenever I see images of Queen Elizabeth or any other monarch...
you have one too, by the way.
Yeah, Queen Beatrix. I can't help to think that what a wonderful invention the French made with the guillotine. I think it's. I'm really appalled by monarchies, and I think it's an absolute shame that it still exists in the 21st century. And vive la République! I would say.
The English were much more Republican 20 years ago, and
that's nonsense.
every now and then, whenever somebody made a Republican statement, people said, "Oh, you want President Blair," at which case everybody was sort of recoiled in horror and decided that after all, having somebody who does all the ceremonial stuff and embodies the country and has no political interest, has none of the politicking and trafficking and doings and financial murky businesses and sort of shady friends, and they decide that
so
after all a monarch with pink hats is much better. I'm saying she's extremely useful. It means that none of the heads of government in Britain are the head of state, and it means that they do not think that they've got all the power. I mean, look at French presidents. Frankly, it's not necessarily a good example.
We can send them away every 5 years, like
and
we do now. Yeah,
and we do.
Vivian Walt, what Elisabeth Moutet is saying is, even though she's not a politician, it is a political office.
Well, that's true, and my God, what an incredible rebranding strategy the royal family has had. I mean, since those days of Diana and, her incredible confessions of what went on inside the palace and, how really disliked they were.
What went on inside the mind of Diana, because she didn't say anything really horrendous.
Well, that's true, but their tax problems and, the Queen really did play some role in turning around the image of the royal family dramatically. I think, the tobacco companies should be studying the royal family as to what they've done right. It's really quite remarkable.
Interesting that you mentioned that. 10 years ago, there was the Golden Jubilee. But actually, people don't talk about that much. If, in fact, royal anniversaries are benchmarks, there seems to be a lot more comparison. You can see images of it there. Her Silver Jubilee, 1977. And Elisabeth, the reason people, when they're looking at this Diamond Jubilee, they're thinking back to 1977 and not to 10 years ago. Is it because 10 years ago there was the specter of still the remnants of the bad blood left over after the tragedy of Princess Diana.
And I also think, strangely enough, that when you have that kind of ceremony in the midst of an economic crisis, which was the case in 1977, and it was just before the winter of discontent. It was at the time when there were strikes, there was a 3-day work week in Britain, etc. And in many ways, again, the Queen is this unmoving politician. She doesn't get a bonus, a stupid bonus at the end of the year. She's not getting her friends.
She gets a bonus every day. I mean, she's paid by the taxpayers.
Do you know how much she costs? She costs something like 60.
It's too much, even if it was £1.
Less than, she costs something like €5.
So it's not about the money. It's not about the money. It's the fact that she's not elected.
Yes, it is. You talked about money.
No,
so
you started about the money. No, it's she has to leave. Simply, it has to be no monarchies anymore in the whole wide world. That would be a very nice project for the United
President
Nations. Maybe we can send Kofi Annan to help the Brits to get rid of this monarch and this
well, he comes
regime.
from the Commonwealth. Actually, he's a Kenyan.
Yeah, well.
And not in the Commonwealth. You know, I was raised in South Africa, and my parents every year would listen to the Queen's address at Christmas. You know, we were thousands of miles away, and somehow this woman held some sort of mythic, stature in our household.
And this is somebody who's got a sense of duty that is quite visible, even by people who say, I'm a Republican, but I respect the Queen.
If she has a duty, let's get her a job, a real job. I mean,
Régis Le Sommier, final word on this.
Yes.
Will you be watching the pageantry come Sunday?
Oh yes, definitely. I mean, I'm very interested in that. I mean, I'm intrigued in many ways how the British functions. I mean, I do respect a lot of British culture, sense of humor, and all that. But I'm always I think the monarchy in England is a way for them to feel like that, like you said, you spoke about South Africa, the Commonwealth, that those principles are still there. Even if England is a small nation today, even if England is rainy, grey, and boring sometimes, they have this thing which is, which they've been able to keep for, over 1,000 years, and we don't have this. That's why sometimes we look at this with we're a little jealous on that, and that's why sometimes our president acts like monarch, because maybe that's the trend and that's how it should be. And but I think it's important, and I think symbolically it tells a lot about the British culture. Yes.
And from Sunday we'll be watching it with Anne-Elisabeth Moutet. I want to thank you, Régis Le Sommier, Anne-Elisabeth. Also want to thank Stéphane de Vries and Vivian Walt. Thank you for being with us here for The World This Week.